Terry, I'm glad you're finding this an enjoyable experience. The one reality that you mentioned there, there is often, probably more at the beginning of your online teaching, the feeling that you're forgetting something, only because there are so many moving parts. But there's checklists and ways to mitigate that feeling for sure. I would definitely recommend one course at a time, especially at the beginning. Now, there are times when I'm teaching 3 online courses at one time and 2 different workshops for 2 different companies, and you really need to be organized. And typically, the amount of courses you teach at one time will force or allow you to find ways to organize your time and set time aside each day. What are things to keep in mind? When you teach online, you're not going to class those 3 hours a week. So I always look at my online teaching time as starting after I've spent 3 hours a week. Yeah, audio recordings, well, video recordings or any technology, it really has to fit your course. Now, you asked the question, wouldn't it be great if there were audio and video integrated into the LMS? One word, Canvas. Canvas has that function, and I can hardly wait. It looks like your paper cut off here at the bottom, but I can anticipate what the question is. Do you have any prompts that you typically use for courses? I use several, and there's a bunch floating around, and I'll be happy to share those with you at some point. What I try to do is find out who they are, why they're in that course, and what they can contribute. And kind of like, what do you need? What can you give? And basically, who are you? And you can often tie that into the particular course itself. In other words, what brought you to computer science? What is your anticipated position in the future? And tell us a little bit about you. What year are you in? And I always throw in a fun fact. But in situations like that, in introductions, I like to keep it to 3 questions. And they're like the VoiceThread or other ways of doing an introduction that can involve video or some other things. But even then, I still try to keep it in those 3 things. The frustrations in a course like this, the frustration level will be higher than the average student because I'm kind of hitting you with the fire hydrant approach of technologies and learning affordances that you can use. So you'll kind of be on the deep end right away. I typically wouldn't introduce more than 2 to 4 at the most technologies for a student to use over a 15-week period. And I would try to keep as many of those embedded and working within the LMS. Now, I'm use social media, and I typically have students follow me on Twitter, or I set up a separate hashtag and things like that. So, but other than that, I try to stay inside the course as much as possible because I want the student to focus on learning, not becoming a technologist. I don't know that your issues were purely IE. However, let me just offer one word, Chrome. Yes, instructions, and that's why we have an instructional designer in our department, because the technical writing aspect of online teaching can be really challenging. We all have a particular way of communicating, and we all have our communication quirks, and they will be exposed in an online course because oftentimes what we're thinking and where we want a student to go doesn't necessarily jive with how we communicate that in a written way. Discussion board, here's how to accomplish that. You can set it up that it grades the initial post, like on a Wednesday, and the responses on a Friday. And you can set up one assignment that has 2 different values to that, and I can show you how to do that. Terry, appreciated your input into this week 1, and I can already see you've jumped into week 2. Glad to have you on board and look forward to continuing to learn together.